The federal government is imposing a carbon plan on the 4 provinces that have not installed a framework of their own. It promises, though, that the average household will not take a hit from that plan. We've got with us Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Great to have you here.
It's really good to be here.
So we're hearing mixed things about this, and obviously you're imposing. These are provinces that have not democratically chosen to have a carbon plan. But are you worried about a couple of things? Are you worried about the drag effect it may have for business? Because business will kind of, I think, bear the brunt of the carbon plan.
We know that we have to be thinking about the economy today and the economy tomorrow. So we obviously are always going to worry about making sure that our business sector is successful today. It's going very well today, as you know, in the economy. We also need to make sure we're ready for tomorrow's economy, and having a plan to deal with climate change, having an environmental plan is a critical part of that. The way we've done it is that we've addressed the challenge by, for those provinces that don't have their own ability to price pollution by their own choice, we're putting in place a federal plan. What that's going to do is mean that, of course, there'll be pricing of pollution, but we're giving all the money, 100 cents on the dollar, federal money that comes in, back to the province. 90% of it will go to citizens, so people will have, we've done the math, they'll have more than what the cost is for them on the very large majority of people. And then we're also putting money back to the private sector, to the small businesses. So that adds up to about $1.4 billion over 5 years. So a significant amount of money that will go to that sector to help people to transition. But the main way they'll do that is by passing costs to consumers, and those costs to consumers have been taken by the rebate they're going to get. So the consumers won't be worse off. There will be a need for businesses to adjust. It's real, but it's the way we're going to price pollution for the long term.
So then let's flip to the other side of the argument, which is you didn't go far enough, that if we actually want to change behavior and reduce our output, we have to feel it in a very strong way. And you've seen that the estimates that we're way too low, even in BC, way too low in terms of really meaningfully getting that output down.
This is not the only thing we need to do, and it's not the only measure we will take. We do need to think about how we effectively transition our overall economy in a way that makes sense. So we've put in place an output-based pricing system for large emitters that allows them to properly adjust to the pricing of pollution. And we've got a position where we're actually going to increase these prices over time, also increasing the rebate to citizens over time. So we recognize that to do the right thing is going to take us some time, and we're doing other things too. I mean, we've put in place a low carbon economy fund so that we can consider innovative ways to adjust to be less carbon intensive from a business standpoint. There's a lot to do. This is an imminent and significant threat, as has been reported,
Sure.
multiple
and
occasions.
Your government has made an obvious and big commitment to doing something about it. If I know I'm getting a rebate, does the price signal work? Am I going to actually change my behavior at all if it ends up being a neutral scenario?
Well, it's pretty much a consensus among economists that the best way to have people make choices is by having a price factor
but you've
in
neutralized that by giving me my money back.
Well, we don't, because you still have a choice. So if we've made something slightly more expensive, you get the money in another pocket, you have the choice what to do with that money. So if you're in your situation, because you live in Toronto, where you've got public transit options, it might be the case that if using a car is more expensive, you might use public transit more often. I guess it's a collection of millions of decisions that will actually lead to a cleaner environment over time. That's what we're trying to do. And it's not novel. I mean, this has been going on in BC for a decade. It's worked. We've actually reduced emissions. The economy's doing well in BC. There's pricing around the world in half of the economies. It's an idea whose time has absolutely come.
You will have heard, no doubt, not even before yesterday, from businesses that say this is the last thing they need. It's an additional cost. They're already struggling in some ways to stay competitive, big and small. This has been the chorus. You've suggested that you're looking at that for your fall fiscal update, that there's some help coming. Can you kind of put some thought around what that looks like? Is it tax reform? Is that on the agenda?
I've been out talking to businesses for the last number of months, and I've heard a few things. I heard a lot of anxiety around trade, in particular the agreement with the United States and Mexico, which I think has successfully been resolved. I've heard a lot of anxiety from the oil and gas sector around access to markets. The purchase of Trans Mountain was an important step. We still have more work to get that right. And yes, people are concerned that the U.S. investment opportunity is different because of tax changes. So we've been looking carefully at that and trying to make sure that the next investment that people make is one that they consider making in Canada, and that there's not a situation where they're incented to do it somewhere else. We're carefully looking at that, and I do want to have more to say about that in the not too distant future.
Is that a yes to tax reform?
Well, I think that what we're trying to do is make sure that we've got a situation where in the U.S., what did they do? They took some decisions that had the impact of changing the investment decision. Mm-hmm. They also changed some other things, so interest isn't as freely deductible as before, and they created an enormous hole in terms of their increasing deficit.
Yes.
So we need to be prudent and recognize that we need to balance different objectives. We do want people to invest to create jobs, and that's critically important. So that's an objective in our windscreen as we look at what we're going to do coming up.
I know you've all been talking about this as well, but where are we on steel and aluminum tariffs? Just such an irritant for so many, and growing over time, right? The costs now begin to embed themselves in various ways. It's
a huge irritant, and obviously a reasonable frustration for both the steel companies and the users of steel. We think that things we've done in the short term make sense. This is a retaliatory action. It's not our decision, obviously, to have these tariffs. We put in place safeguards, as you know. We've got remission order opportunities for people that are in a situation where there's a real challenge for them. So there's ways we're trying to mitigate the immediate impact, and we're trying to negotiate. And it is an ongoing process where we're trying to work with the United States to get through this. Right. Clearly, there is goodwill on both sides, but we're not there yet. You will have heard the same quote I did, which was the president saying the only trade deal worse than NAFTA is the WTO, which isn't super logical, but he's definitely robbing that body of some of its power through a variety of means. Is that a real problem? I mean, we go to these tribunals, we've won in the past and nothing's changed, but at least they existed to say this is wrong. You saw how important we thought dispute resolution was in the new USMCA. So we do see that as a really important clause for a rules-based trading system. We see that as important with the WTO as well. We don't like to see punitive actions like the U.S. steel actions because they're not consistent with our U.S.-Canada alliance. So we're working hard on all fronts. We're trying to work hard to make sure that we get to some sensible ideas around WTO reform. We are working hard to get rid of these steel and aluminum tariffs. I just want to say, I am cautiously optimistic that we will get there. There's just some work that needs to be done to get there. We have seconds left, but your central bank governor is raising rates. Do you worry that they go too far, too fast and choke off your recovery? We always want to remind people that it's really important to be prudent around their personal debts. I think that's critical. People are experiencing some pain as a result of this. On the flip side of that, we have a strong economy. The economy is growing at a strong pace. We're seeing the inflation that led to the central bank governor doing this. Mm-hmm. That is an indicator that things are going well. So I think, people have to be prudent, and we have to say that it's good that our economy is doing so well. We're going to keep trying to work on behalf of Canadians to keep that going.